All right, so today I wanted to talk about a transit that I am currently experiencing. And it's a transit that everyone's going to experience once they get a certain age, and that it is the Pluto Square Pluto transit. This is what they call the midlife underworld initiation, right? So this particular transit is most significant, one that we all can experience in our entire lifetime. And it typically marks a point of no return because you cannot come through a Pluto Square Pluto the same person you were before it. So what is this transit? So Pluto Square Pluto occurs when transitioning Pluto forms a 90-degree square to your natal Pluto position. Now, because Pluto moves so slowly, this transit happens, anywhere between the age of 36 to 61, depending on your generation. And it lasts several years, not just weeks or months. And it's not a gentle nudge, It's kind of like just demolishing the old structures or the old identity of who you were and who you are becoming, right? So the core energy of Pluto, let's get into what Pluto is and what this energy signifies. So before understanding what the square is, know that Pluto represents the Lord of the underworld, right? It's the planet of death, rebirth, radical transformation. Pluto rules power, control, compulsion, shadow, and soul level truth. Pluto destroys what is no longer aligned with your deepest authentic self. Pluto also exposes what has been hidden in the world and in you. So when Pluto squares itself, your own Plutonian nature turns on itself, right? So at that point, you're being forced an evacuation of everything that you have built, suppressed, or hung on to since birth, right? Well, this transit systematically targets whatever structures in your life that are built on fear rather than truth, obligation rather than gentle desire, old identity that no longer fits who you are becoming, power dynamics you've unconsciously participated in, and survival patterns from childhood that have become a prison, right? So this is what dismantling your identity is when you have this Pluto Square Pluto transit. It doesn't matter how carefully you built those structures. If they aren't real, then Pluto will find them. So what are some ways that it shows up in common experiences? I'm going to start with identity, and as I begin to progress along my series, I'm going to be talking more about identity, more about self-love, self-concept, all those good things that makes us who we are or who we are becoming, right? In a world that is just so vast and there's just so many different energies, there's just so many people who has so many different personalities, and we run into these different things every walk of our lives, right? So it's good to be rooted and grounded in who you are, what you stand for, and just being authentically true. So how does this show up when it comes to identity? So as I stated earlier, we build these structures since birth. It comes from the way we were raised. It comes from our environment. It comes from our beliefs. It comes from what others tell us about who we are. We build this, and this becomes our identity. So what is an identity death, right? Because this is what Pluto Square Pluto causes. It causes an identity death. So the person you have been, which are your roles, your titles, your self-concept, the story you told to yourself about who you are, all of that begins to crack, right? So what once defined you may suddenly feel hollow, it may feel foreign, or it may feel suffocating, right? And with that, it can be deeply, deeply disorienting. But it's part of the process. It's necessary, right? It's necessary. Because whatever you have buried, if it's rage, grief, desire, power, trauma, truth, Pluto drags that into the light. Pluto drags that into the light, and then you're confronted with old wounds that were never truly healed, but only managed. Unconscious patterns running your life from behind the scenes. Places where you have given your power away. The ways you have been complicit in your own limitations, right? So all of this is where we begin to have to confront that shadow side of ourselves. Everything that we had hidden, that we thought we had healed or fixed, is now being confronted. You'll begin to see external structures fall away, right? Jobs, friendships, relationships, living situations, belief systems. Anything that's misaligned may crumble during this period. And for me, with my own experiences, there are times where I've felt like I've been going crazy. Like 1 minute I can be set in wanting to master something about myself, and then I'm always forced to see the shadow side of it, like, yo, you're really not there yet. So what are you doing? Are you just going with the flow, or are you actually digging deep to heal that shadow side of yourself so that you can come out and have a view or have a perspective of your identity and who you are in the world around you in a better light? So with Pluto Square Pluto, with my own experiences, I've often, again, felt like my life has been falling apart. Everything I built isn't working anymore for me, or I don't know who I am. The I don't know who I am, I will say, is the number one thing that I am currently experiencing myself with this Pluto Square Pluto transit. It's something that I definitely I've went to, talk to friends about, and some people just don't get it. And it could be more so because some people aren't experiencing what I'm experiencing. So when I went within and kind of just did my own research, like, yo, what is going on? Like, why am I going through this? And just looking at my own birth chart and just seeing where I am in life, it explained a lot of why I have this confusion of I don't know who I am. So this Pluto is doing its job, right? The falling apart is the transformation. Because mind you, I work on myself, my identity, or, just being authentic to who I am and learning and studying about self-love, about confidence, self-esteem, just about building up myself and loving myself to the fullest, and not getting so consumed in other people's problems, or getting consumed in a relationship that takes rather than gives. So many parts of myself that I've just thought that I've had it in the bag, right? I've had it in the bag. But Pluto's like, that midlife crisis hits, and it's like, nah, you still got a little bit more to go, And this is what is really going to pull Pluto Square Pluto is really going to pull this out of you, right? So anywho, with Pluto Square Pluto, you have the power struggles and the control issues. Pluto rules power, right? The square activates an intense internal confrontation with this. So the questions are that you have to ask yourself is where you've been powerless and accepted it. Like, what parts of your life where you felt powerless and you just accepted it? Where are areas in your life where you've over-controlled or tried to over-control out of fear? What toxic or cohesive dynamics in your relationships or in your work life that you try to control? What about your own relationships to personal authority and sovereignty? This is the area where the power struggles and the control issues lie. So here, Pluto is asking you to confront this. Pluto here is asking me to reclaim my authentic power, not over others, but to have that unshakable ownership of myself. So it's true, when you get, a certain age, you just begin to have this perspective of just letting people be them. Let people show you who they are. And when people show you who they are, you believe it. And you don't try to change them, right? We can't change no one. We don't own no one. So the best thing to do is to focus on you and how to heal the inner parts of yourself so that you can have unshakable ownership of yourself and that you can see life from a whole new perspective. So, next we're going to get into the psychological architecture of the Pluto Square Pluto transit. So there's like 5 different stages, and as we go further, I'll break down those stages in our next video. This was just a little bit of a deep dive into the Pluto Square Pluto aspect. This is a really, really great topic that I definitely want to immerse myself in to get a better understanding of the phase of life that I am in right now, how my life is transitioning, and just, having this turn point to a better perspective of life, and just knowing that I can control only myself, right? I can control only myself, and just working on my inner world helps with seeing my outer world in a whole new perspective, seeing people in a whole new perspective, and just ultimately hanging on to authenticity and just being comfortable with who I am, right? So, as I stated, we'll get into the psychological architect, and it's 5 different stages that we'll talk about, which is very, very, very deep topic, especially when we're talking about the ego. The ego is a very, very deep topic. So stay tuned. Part 2 coming up, Pluto Square Pluto, and what it means and how you can improve your life moving forward by doing the necessary things to build a better inner world that will reflect an amazing outer world. Peace.